Welcome to Tell Your Friends, history's greatest podcast. This week on the PCast, we are talking to comedy legend, the great Gilbert Gottfried, and Frank Santopadre, co-hosts of Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast. Tell your friends, history's greatest podcast is officially a go. Everybody, welcome to the Tell Your Friends podcast, where, in the words of the great poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, every day is a winding road. If you enjoy this podcast, we ask for very little in return. Just go to iTunes and leave a little review. Helps a lot. Podcasts literally live or die on these goddamn reviews. Excuse my language in front of a lady who I know is listening. You can find us at tyfpodcast.com. And you can follow us on Twitter at TYF Podcast. I'm your docent, Liam McEneaney, and I'm currently writing this intro on my couch. Actually, I'm saying this intro on my couch, looking at my sister's cat, a 16-year-old calico named Maddie. Say hi, Maddie. As she finally shut up. She was just a second ago snoozing in a little ball on a cushion. Innocent in the knowledge, free of the knowledge, I should say. Innocent and free of the knowledge that pretty soon someone's getting a bath. We bought the shampoo for you last night. She's giving me a look like, yeah, whatever. This weekend I celebrated my 6-month anniversary with my girlfriend by going to the Metropolitan Opera at Lincoln Center in Manhattan. It is one of the nicest, toniest buildings in New York City, and maybe in the world, actually. And you walk in, and you immediately understand that you are about to... I mean, it's just built, it's designed, it's architected. And it's funny, because on the outside, it looks a little bit like a tissue box. But you go inside, and you understand, you really are just made to understand... from the moment you walk in, that you are about to enjoy an evening of high culture, whether you want to or not. As a kid who was raised by parents in the middle of Queens who didn't have money, whenever I'm in a place that just reeks of wealth and influence, I immediately revert to that Irish servant boy mentality where I believe I'm going to be thrown out as an imposter at any moment. You know, just... I do. I believe I'm going to be thrashed by the master of the house. You know, I just have this mental image of me holding these tickets in my hand and this guy going, "Oh, these must be forgeries." This is what I imagine the 1980s upper crust snob villain character sniffing as he rips up my tickets and throws them in my face. Luckily, luckily that doesn't happen. Luckily, I live in a world where if you spend your money, you get your seats. I was there to witness maybe the worst opera ever to grace the Met's stage. And this is the same Met that once put on a production of Dr. Raveling's traveling cat circus's The Meow Meow of Seville, which ended 2 minutes in when 2 members of the cast stalked, killed, ate, and threw up a lady's first stole in the front row. So it has a lot to live down to. This show was called The Death of Leon Klinghoffer, and it's controversial because it's about a real incident where terrorists hijacked a cruise ship in the 1980s and killed a passenger, and because it's about Palestinians, it's necessarily supposed to be anti-Semitic, and really it should be controversial because it's terrible. In fact, Palestinians should be protesting because their cause is being taken up by one of the worst opera writers in modern history. This dude, whose name is John Adams, there's a line in the show that's literally just a guy listing kinds of birds for 3 minutes, just singing all different kinds of birds, and don't think that just because I'm, as you can tell, a blue collar working class Joe Sixpack kind of Johnny Lunchpail kind of guy, that I'm somehow not appreciative of high culture, because I am. I do like it. But I like it done well. But, you know, it's funny that that feeling of old money and not belonging, and is how I felt when I went to interview Gilbert and Frank at the Friars Club. There's just so much money put into that place, and there's so much history in that place, and I felt completely intimidated. But Frank, before the interview, he said the nicest thing to me when I walked in, which was, we were talking about this, and he said, no, your talent means you belong here. And that meant a lot to me, because it's true. It made me feel a lot better. In any case, just to prove I'm still a blue-collar, working-class Queens guy, I've also decided to read a few memos that I've written to my neighbors over the years here in my apartment building. I know I'm not better than everybody, just the jerks who share my living space. So here are 3 memos I've written to 3 different neighbors. Memo number 1, to the neighbor who stole my doormat. What the fuck? Okay, I know it's been a while, but I honestly still can't believe it, and so I have to ask. Come on, guy, you really needed to steal my doormat? My doormat? We're not even talking about an ornamental, expensive doormat, the kind embroidered by a young child in a dark factory in the heart of Taiwan, the kind with the word welcome woven in over an irresistibly crude caricature of puppies playfully squirming under a doormat of their own, their big eyes staring straight through your soul, the kind that you can only find in an elegant, out-of-the-way specialty store like Kmart or Target for $4.99. And I understand that not everyone has the rare combination of both 10 seconds and $5 that it takes to go out and buy one of their own. And if I had owned this kind of extravagantly decorative doormat, I would understand a working man's need to steal it, to give his family a small taste of the same lavish, luxurious lifestyle that Dukkabors like myself enjoy in our rent-controlled apartments in the heart of Queens. But that's not the kind of doormat we're talking about, is it? The kind of doormat we're talking about, the kind that you stole under the cover of night, is dirty and beige. It's the kind of doormat that I got not from Walmart or even from Kiki's 99-cent Emporium, but rather from the relatives of an elderly neighbor who had recently died, shuffling off this mortal coil in house dress and slippers, plastic bags clutched in her hand, a faded babushka on her head, and a complaint about the heat left unspoken on her tongue. That's right, you stole a free dead woman's doormat. To be honest, I'm not even angry so much as I am completely baffled. What exactly did you think you were going to do? Just put it down outside of your apartment, the only place you could logically use it, and hope that I wouldn't go door to door through the building hallways looking for it? In the annals of crime, stealing a neighbor's doormat falls somewhere between mugging your boss in the elevator on the way up to the office and bursting into a police precinct, waving your shotgun in the air, and declaring that the next person who moves gets it. Which is to say that it falls exactly halfway between being poorly thought out and fucking retarded. And if you can't see a doormat, if you can't use a doormat for its intended purpose, what exactly would you do with it? Sell it on eBay? Not that I would put it past you. After all, the person who would steal a used dime store doormat is the exact same person who has undoubtedly at several points in their life had a small swarthy man named Chico calmly inform them that you can't have the weed if you ain't got the cash. And so I scoured Craigslist, searching for the telltale ad. For sale, I imagined it would say. Doormat, gently used. No questions asked. Serial numbers have been filed off. Am looking for best reasonable offer. Cash, food, or even MetroCard swipe onto Subway. Or perhaps this doormat was of some value to you. A value that I myself did not ascertain and could only truly appreciate once it was gone from my life. In my mind's eye, I see you running through the building, clad in an Indiana Jones leather jacket and fedora, clutching your bleeding gunshot arm as dark-suited thugs from the Russian mob close in fast. Trapped in a corner, desperate, you wheel around, revealing a Luger held to the head of a dirty beige doormat trembling in the crook of your arm. Don't do anything we'll both regret, says a large man who steps from the shadows, a deep scar running down the side of his face, a gloved hand removing a pair of $500 Ray-Bans, revealing one eye made of milky white glass, the other filled with a mixture of hatred and respect. You shake your head once. No. You pant for breath, swallow, then add. Tell your men to step back and give us safe conduct, Vladimir. Now! Or the only place this doormat lies is the inside of the entrance of a mausoleum. He gives you the once-over. He knows after what went down in Morocco, where he watched a small frayed bathroom rug die in his arms, that you'd be just crazy enough to do it. He signals to his men and they step back, warily placing their guns halfway into their holsters. You've won this round, he says, but I'll return. Even you can't watch forever. One day you'll be napping or drunk or out of your house for 10 minutes to get some milk from the store, and you'll leave that doormat alone and unguarded. And when you do, I'll be there, and I can tell you now I won't have to steal it away. It will come with me, and willingly. And you know in your heart that he's right. You may have that doormat for now. Hell, you may even love it as much as once I did, but you'll never own it. That tread-worn beauty that makes it a treasure is also its biggest curse. That doormat was born to roam free, my friend. No matter what kind of care you take of it, there's going to be a morning when you wake to find it gone, and with only the memories to sustain you. Memo number 2. To the neighbor whose Wi-Fi signal I've been sharing. Constant service outages. Hey, Linksys_AP_77. What gives, man? As a comedian and a writer who works from his apartment, the bulk of my day is spent emailing people who could potentially hire me, then checking my fantasy baseball team, then my Facebook page to see if anyone's commented on my post, then my Instagram page to see if anyone's commented on my pictures, then my Twitter feed to see if anyone's commented on my tweets, then my Facebook page, then my Instagram page, and then my Twitter page. Between that and Googling myself to see if anyone's been talking about me, and downloading movies and music from the Pirate Bay, your internet connection is one of the most important tools of my trade. Perhaps in your selfishness you can't understand this, but when you aren't responsible enough to pay your bills in a timely manner, that affects me. As an adult, I've learned to accept responsibility, and I'm here to tell you that it's time that you do the same. If you don't have the money for your high-speed internet bill, perhaps you should get a second job, or do what I do, call my parents and ask if you can borrow it. Don't worry, experience shows that my parents are very lenient lenders and won't expect you to pay them back anytime soon. Thanks for reading this memo. I was going to email you, but I don't know your address, and even if I did, well, your internet's down. Memo number 3. To the guy in the apartment whose window faces mine. Your strict daily regimen of blasting the same 5 Metallica songs over and over and singing along at the top of your lungs, interspersed with the most disturbing, deep-throated hacking cough heard outside of a 1920s TB ward. Hey, buddy. I understand that you need a job. I know it's hard finding work that matches your unique skill set. After all, I've been on more than one interview in my life, and the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years, is rarely followed with, now, can you do an impression of Lars Ulrich as if he were about to lose a lung? Well, luckily, aside from my work solving the thrilling adventures of Liam McEneaney in the case of the missing doormat, I seem to be blessed with not a little spare time. So I thought I'd do the neighborly thing and help you come up with some career options. Now, at first I thought, join the army. But then I realized, were you to become a member of the armed forces, you are the guy who gets fragged by his own unit, probably somewhere between the second and third chorus of Unforgiven. Also, America tends to send her best and brightest sons into the battle against her foes, and let's be honest with each other. The only opposing army that might be intimidated by an aging phlegmatic metalhead would be the Kiss Army, and they're on our side. Then it hit me. You could be a wedding DJ. You've got the experience. By throwing your windows wide and sharing your love of mainstream speed metal, you're already DJing for the entire neighborhood. On the other hand, there's only so many times that the happy couple will be able to listen to Enter Sandman before requesting that you play something a little more danceable like Hey Ya or the Beer Barrel Polka. When they do, you're going to have to look them in the eye and say slowly and steadily, so they know you're completely serious. First time ever I heard the Black Album, I knew I was put here on this earth for one purpose and one purpose only, to share the beauty of this music with the world, whether it wants me to or not. And I know that the doctors are wrong, and that this lower respiratory tract infection isn't the black lung, but rather a punishment from the demon god of rock and roll himself for ignoring my mission, for not playing these same 5 Metallica songs over and over and over and over. Then the groom will regroup, take a breath, and say, in the same gentle, patient tone of voice he would use were he placating a small child holding a loaded gun, that he completely understands where you're coming from, but perhaps, at the very least, you would be so kind as to not scream along with the song, screaming long and loud like you were trying to awaken the departed souls of all the brain cells you killed smoking weed as a teenager glorying in the profoundly adult freedoms of the Meadowlands parking lot pre-concert bake fest. And then you will have no choice but to slowly and dramatically take the wad of cash you were paid for the gig, and you will insist on being paid in cash, as you don't believe in those so-called banks and their rules about minimum balances. You will take that cash out of your pocket, and you will throw it in the bride's face, and then you will shriek the lyrics of Master of Puppets as loud as you can in its entirety, interspersed with the juiciest, lung-deep hacking coughs possible. You will shriek like the devil unleashed from a pneumonia clinic in the deepest bowels of metal hell, because no one can put a price on your art, man. And then you should take the money back, because let's be honest, a couple hires a DJ for their wedding based solely on the fact that he's $500 cheaper than the competition, and they pay him in cash in advance without taking references or even a playlist of the kinds of records he plans to spin. Said couple doesn't deserve that $50 plus car fare in the first place. You will take that $50 plus car fare, and this being the most important part, you will go out and you will buy a new fucking album by anyone other than Metallica. And if there's any money left over, and if you find it in your heart, in return for my graciousness and my compassion and my care, and my taking the time to help a stranger in need, perhaps you would be so kind as to buy me a new doormat. And now a story from Lisa Kirchner.
We've never met, but I can tell right away it's Michel from the way he saunters into the room, moving from employee to employee, 3 very attractive men who seem to be his old and dear friends. Okay, super, que fait que. There's this banter in the room, a combination of French and English and Arabic, very Lebanese. Michel, I hear one of them say, mother of Michel. It's so adorable. Only a hairdresser would bring his mother to Qatar. Which, by the way, you may know and love as Qatar. I certainly did. It's a little slip of a peninsula between Saudi Arabia and Dubai. And I remember the first time I heard it called Qatar, I thought, that sounds like a bug spray. But that is closer to their pronunciation, which is a guttural Qatar. Qatar. We don't have that sound in the English language, and so we say Qatar. Well, unless you're Canadian, and they say Qatar. And of course, the British still say Qatar. Anyway, there I am in Qatar, and I am so desperately unhappy. I am at this salon for several reasons. One, there seems to be a Filipina cartel running the hair salons in Doha, and so nobody knows what to make of my limp American locks. Like most of the Western expats in town, I've taken to just pulling my hair back and coloring it myself. But then suddenly I had seen all these women start to pop up with really great hairdos. And I thought, oh, did you get that when you were in Singapore? Oh, did you get that when you were in Thailand? And no, they had all gone to Michel. I had to meet this master of hair. Not only that, I have always loved going to the salon. You just sit there like some kind of guru and you are transformed without having to do anything. So there I am, in that cape, armless, legless, powerless, just how I like it, ready for Michel to do his magic. Finally, he approaches. He begins to massage my head. And I want to tell him how much I love what he's done for my friend Michelle, actually. But, oh my God, I am totally turned on. It's been 9 long months since my husband left Qatar, and 8 long months since he informed me over the telephone that he wanted a divorce. Now, one of the other things about this crazy Muslim country is it's illegal to date there. It's really not a place you want to become a freshly minted divorcee and try to discover who you are as a woman. But that's where I was and what I was doing, and mostly because I had no energy to move on. And so I really wanted my transformation, and I really wanted Michelle to make it happen. When into the shop walks this beautiful woman. She is heavily made up and stuffed into this tight t-shirt and tight jeans. Michelle breaks away from me and bounds toward her for 3 kisses. Hello, hello, hello. Also very Lebanese. And then he turns to me and he says, "Me présente ma fiancée." You're what? I'm sorry. You're not gay? I mean, look, not that there's anything wrong with them, but an experience with a straight male hairdresser had made me vow never again. Unaccustomed as I was to the attention, the undivided attention of a straight man taking scissors to my head, I paid scant notice to what he was actually doing. I ended up with these 2 dangling tendrils on either side of my head, like a billy goat. And there was nothing particularly wrong in my life at the time. But I remember thinking the whole time, oh, he'll know what would make me sexy, right? I can hardly be trusted now. Deep yogic breath. Yeah, I've started doing yoga. And I've also started to realize that my preconceived ideas about how things are in the world really haven't been serving me all of that well. It's why I'm still in Qatar, and it's why I stay in Michel's shop, even as his leads me back to wash my hair. I come back, a magazine is placed in my lap, and I notice that Michel and his fiancée are arguing about something. And I just go off into this tizzy. What makes somebody boyfriend and girlfriend? Why is she putting up with that? Or why is he putting up with that? What keeps people together? What is that glue? How do you make the leap from hello to good morning? Am I really going to have to learn somebody new? Figure out what they like in their coffee? Figure out how they feel about their mother? How they feel about my mother? And then an hour and a half has passed with me in that state. Michel has finished my hair, and he is now fingering through it once more. "Now you are more you," he says. "Beautiful and a little bit wild." Well, it's a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, how can this guy know what's more or less me? But, I kind of lap it up. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, now, always good to practice. What do I say back? Before I can come up with anything, however, he unfastens my cape. He takes my neck and head in his hands and tilts my head back to kiss me, if kiss would be the right word to describe his technique. Rather than opening my mouth and exploring it with his tongue, he clamps his lips onto mine and suctions them into his maw. He releases me just as one of his employee/friends rounds the corner. I look in the mirror and I see I am thoroughly red. Michel is over with the employee/friend at the register. I go into autopilot. The next step is typically payment, so I grab my purse and I make my way over to the register. Michel accepts a fraction of the cost of the service. Why some? Wasn't I good enough? Then he says to me, "May I have your phone number?" And sure as day, I point at the book and say, "You already have it." I know. I can't believe I'm flirting with this cretin. And even as I walk out the door, I am chiding myself. But also thinking, at least Michel is unconnected to anyone I know in this country where it's illegal to date. I can't be seen to be dating someone. Well, I'm still married. Is this what it's come to? Am I going to turn into one of those women who sits by a bar hoping somebody will buy me a drink with the lipstick smeared on my face? And then I hear the sound of footsteps. In Doha, Qatar, the air never dips below body temperature. Nobody overtakes anybody on foot. So I am pretty much certain it's Michel. Between panic and recognition and opening my car door, I decide I want Michel to maul me a little bit. He gets in the car. I know he's pretty much harmless. Drive, he says. But where? There's the problem of being seen. We are in a desert. It is flat, interminable, and white. People are known by their vehicles. Most people have SUVs, particularly Toyota Land Cruisers. I don't know why. I, however, have an Audi A8, a big black Audi A8. Aha! I'm going to drive to the next roundabout over. It's an amusement park called Aladdin's Kingdom that every night is lit up as if it's open, yet has never once actually been open. I know it won't be open tonight. We drive. Michel begins to suction and paw, and my internal stupor continues. Do I like this? Is this going to bruise my lips? Would he do the same thing between my legs? And then his cock is out and in my hand. Oh! Not since high school has a dick in my palm felt so weirdly out of place. Much as I want to move on, I'm not ready for someone who can't sense my hesitation. Oh, hey! This was a lot of fun, but I have a dinner party I'm supposed to be going to, so I gotta go. I'll take it back to the salon. Finish me. What? Finish you? How about you get your girlfriend to do the job and then you can finish me? But never mind, because you just told me everything I ever need to know about you. What I said was this. Oh, hey, listen. Show me that you know how to be a good boy and draw out your pleasure, because right now, I really do have to go. Being that we're in Qatar, this actually works. I drive him back to his salon at the next roundabout over. But as I'm driving away, again, I'm chiding myself. What? There was a time I would have slapped that guy across the face, kicked him out of the car, and made him find his own way back home. What happened to that girl? What is wrong with you? Then I catch myself in the rearview mirror, and I think, oh, gosh, my hair does look pretty good. And that's when I know what happened to that girl. She's learned it's better not to make a mess if you don't want to clean it up. I did have a dinner party to go to. And so I went to the dinner party. I had only recently been invited to this little shindig. Though I'd been in Qatar for almost 3 years, they had this weekly they'd had this weekly gathering the whole time. I had only recently been asked to join. And I come and I fill up my plate and I come over to the table with it. Hello, hello, hello. We all did that now. And we say our hellos around the room. And then Ben says hello. Ben. Young, beautiful Ben. He's only been on campus for a month, but I know how he's weaseled his way into this group because he is young and beautiful. He takes my chin in his hand and looks me in the eye and says, "Is that a bruise on your lip?" Thanks. And it was.
Thank you, Lisa. You can buy Lisa Kirchner's book, Hello, American Lady Creature, What I Learned as a Woman in Qatar, from Amazon through a link on the TYFpodcast.com. And if you do that through our website, for every sale, we get like 15 cents. You can find her on lisalkirchner.com. That's LisalKirschner.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Lisa Kirchner. You can also support Tell Your Friends History's Greatest Podcast by going to patreon.com/radio and kicking in a couple bucks. That's patreon.com/RADIO. Gilbert Gottfried is a repeat offender on the TYF podcast. And when he offered to meet me at the Friars Club for an interview with his amazing Colossal podcast co-host Frank Santopadre, I jumped at the chance. There are some places that literally have history seeped into their walls. In New York City, there was the old Yankee Stadium. You can still find that feeling in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and also the Metropolitan Opera House. But when I went to Rome and I touched the walls of the Colosseum, I was acutely aware that someone 2,000 years previously had placed their hand on the same wall in the same spot. And that's how Friars Club is with old showbiz, man. Friars Club is old show business for sure. And I don't just mean because the average member is old enough to still think of Don Rickles as that hot young talent with a dirty mouth. But it's got that sense of class that I don't really get when I go to like new or showbiz shows at rock clubs and comedy clubs. It's a proper gentleman's club with dark wood paneling and a dining room and a bar and a bartender who knows how to mix drinks and a small event area with framed and all these framed pictures of all the famous people who had passed through their doors. I met Gilbert and Frank and Gilbert's wife Dara in the George Burns room where they just finished interviewing Frankie Avalon for their podcast, and here we are.
Did you do this before we interviewed Compliment or afterwards? You just had Matt Damon on the brain.
Afterwards. I think I had Matt
After you
Damon.
saw Rounders.
How does that sound right there? Can you hear me? Okay, you can hear me. Am I coming up on the mic? Okay, there we go. Microphone check. I see me on the levels. I'm sitting here in the Friars Club with Gilbert Gottfried and his podcast co-host, Frank Santopadre. Gilbert is the host of the Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast.
Yes, you can hear it on gilbertgottfried.com and subscribe to it on iTunes and SideshowNetwork.tv. There, I went on your podcast, plugged my podcast. Goodbye.
Yeah, I got all I needed, actually.
I
Thanks,
don't
Gilbert.
see. This is this weird showbiz we live in nowadays that everyone has to go on a podcast just to advertise their own podcast.
Hey, you like wasting your time listening to my voice? Wait until you hear Gilbert and Frank's podcast.
Thanks, Liam.
Well, no one likes listening to your show, so I can vouch for it. I've heard
You know
5
what-
minutes of it. Yes.
You know what's really funny is I was just talking to Frank about this. I know people are listening. I know you guys are listening because I see the numbers, but absolutely nobody's responding. Nobody follows it on Twitter. So I'm like, are people hate listening this? Like, are they just
This
like?
episode's not going to help.
Yeah.
But I really do like your podcast. That's honestly, it's because you guys actually you just interviewed just now before I got here Frankie Avalon, Frankie Avalon and the Four Seasons, and he talked a lot about
No, you're thinking of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Oh,
God.
yes. Yeah.
Frankie Avalon, a teen idol from the 50s and
Listen,
60s.
I did
You're
research.
talking about Frankie Sinatra. Yeah.
All the Frankies. Is it an Italian thing, Liam? Are we all the same to you?
Yeah, well,
You're
you know.
talking about Bride of Frankie Stein.
Listen, I barely do research on my own guests.
I see that.
let alone on your fucking guests. All right, but anyway, my point
And
is,
we do fuck our guests. That's part of it.
wow,
See, we don't pay them, but we will fuck all of our guests.
I'm really glad I missed
Yeah.
it. I'm really glad I got here just at 1:30.
That's why we have Vaseline as our top sponsor. Yes.
Anyway, my point was you.
Yeah, I hope you have a point, because this is horrible.
You talked to all these altercockers.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we interviewed Larry Storch from F Troop,
Yeah.
who's like in his mid-90s, and realized he wasn't her oldest kid.
He was our fourth oldest.
Yes. Pretty soon we're just going to be talking to the dead.
Well, we're at the Friars Club. It's the right place for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm 38. I come here to feel young.
They say the average age here is deceased.
Yes.
So
But you guys, so Gilbert, people know who you are. But
Yes.
Frank, you are a comedy writer. Is that
allegedly, yeah.
allegedly a comedy writer?
I can vouch for that. I haven't heard one thing he said that's ever been funny.
But you most recently wrote for The View.
I did.
And how did you guys end up meeting each other?
Well, I would watch The View and say, God damn it, that Barbara Walters is funny. Does she think I'm up herself? Is she just that quick?
But no, the third or fourth time you went to a taping, you noticed
Yes.
Frank was on the side writing jokes.
Let's see. When did we meet? We met the first time on Caroline's Comedy Hour in 1994.
Oh, God.
When he played, I was a writer on that show. Richard Jenny hosted that show, and Gilbert came on, and he played Robert Redford in an Indecent Proposal parody.
You can see the resemblance. Yes.
You could probably find the clip on YouTube. That was the first time we worked together, and then we would just run into each other at events and things over the years.
Now, I think the first time we actually met, weren't you on your way to an autograph signing?
No, that was later.
No.
We
Oh.
worked. That was in L.A. in '96.
Yes.
I was driving down Ventura. We've told this story at UCB. It's a fun story. I was driving down Ventura Boulevard on my way to one of those cheeseball autograph signing shows, those nostalgia shows.
Right.
A little like our podcast.
Yes.
Really. And it was Pat
Our
Harrington.
podcast is a lot less respectable.
There was a hotel called the Beverly Garland Hotel, named after the 1950s scream queen Beverly Garland, who was in a lot of B movies. And there was a hotel.
And of course, there's something in LA named after her.
Yes, of course. And they would have these nostalgia conventions where you would go, and there Don Knotts would be there, and Norman Fell from Three's Company, and they would sign autographs.
And then it would also be, those are people that someone would know. But then also at these conventions, you'll have Klingon number 17
Sure.
in one particular episode of Star Trek.
The green chick from Star
Yes.
Trek, or someone who was in one Batman episode will
Actually-
show up at these things.
Someone who is one of the henchmen of the Joker.
I once wrote for the show, and I really fucked up because we were supposed to send the host to the big New York Comic-Con. I came up with this whole idea. We'd go to the Comic-Con, and we'd be part of the costume contest. And then it turned out that I picked the wrong Comic-Con. And there's actually a much smaller Comic-Con in basically one big conference room in the Penn Hotel. And so I was basically there the first night just to scout it out, basically so I wouldn't get screamed at. It's like, God, is there something funny? I ended up talking to this guy, Bill Daly.
Of course, from
yeah.
I Dream of Jeannie.
Yeah,
sure.
It was
And then later on, Bob
Newhart show.
Bob Newhart show,
Yeah.
and I ended up talking to him. There was nobody there. It was the Thursday, and nobody was there yet. I ended up talking to the guy about Bob Newhart for 40 minutes because he was just really grateful that someone actually knew him from the Newhart show and not from I Dream of Jeannie. Because he was telling me
Sure.
yeah, all my Newhart photos don't sell. It's all I Dream of Jeannie.
He was Howard Borden, the next door neighbor.
The airline pilot.
He was actually he was a navigator.
And I really I had to buy an autograph. I was like, well, I guess I'll buy an autograph photo because I've taken up 40 minutes of his time. I still have it in my apartment somewhere. But I was like, I could take this guy out for dinner, I think.
Bill Daly, put him on the list.
And at that event that we were at,
Yeah.
they also, sitting together, was both the woman who was the voice of Snow White and the woman who was the voice of the witch. And they're sitting and both of them look like witches.
They're both 110.
I was about to say.
And someone goes over, introduces us, me to the woman who's Snow White, and says, "Oh, you have something in common. Both of you are known for Disney films. You were Snow White, and Gilbert Gottfried here was Iago the parrot in Aladdin. And she reaches out to me and grabs my hand and my arm in a death grip. And I figured okay. She, she's thrilled that there's this connection. And then she starts singing the song from Snow White. And it's, someday my prince will come, someday. And I thought, okay, she's honoring me with this. And then she continues. And my work is done. And she does the entire song in a death grip on my arm, where it's like I'm bleeding.
While dressed as Snow White,
yes,
too, you should point out.
Yes. She's 1,000, and she's dressed as Snow White. And then, when she finally ends the song, she goes, and you are?
So I was driving down.
And then you sang, "I'm looking out for me." And
Oh, yeah.
you grabbed her arm.
I was driving to this event in the Valley, and I saw him wandering down Ventura Boulevard.
Yeah.
He doesn't drive, and he was in L.A. for some gig. And I said, that looks like Gilbert. I have to pull over. And I pulled over, and I said, I don't know if you remember me. I said, we worked together on Caroline's Comedy Hour. And I said, would you like to come to this convention?
Yes.
I'm going to Don Knotts and Norman Fell. And I don't know, Bill Bixby, Pat Harrington Jr. was there from One Day at a Time. He just got in the car. So I don't know if he knew who I was. Or
I basically am someone that will climb into a strange man's van.
Did he offer you a piece of candy?
Yes, yeah. He said, I'm looking for my puppy.
So I drove him to the event, and I witnessed the Snow White event. And Adam West was there. That's where we met Adam West.
Adam
the
West
first time.
was there. And yeah, those things are very strange events.
I mean, he was a guest on your podcast.
Yeah.
The Adam West.
He was great on it.
That was actually the last one we were listening to that.
Adam West said that he was kicked out of an orgy with Frank Gorshin, who played the Riddler.
He also paid Gil a great compliment. He said that you would have made a
great penguin.
You actually, yes, I could see that.
Yeah, I froze when he said that. That was like the greatest compliment.
Just imagine you're as good an actor as Burgess Meredith.
Yeah.
So really, without knowing it, that day at the Beverly Garland Hotel in the Valley really turned out to be the kind of strange beginning of this thing that developed 15 years later.
Yeah, who would have thought that would have made you a podcast fortune?
Yes. Who would have thought?
Can I say to all the kids out there, if you want to make fast and big money, podcast. If you want a future, podcast. Go to the ever-expanding world of podcasts. Quit college. You don't need it. Go into podcasting. It's where the real money is. Second only to door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman is the wide world of podcasts.
I looked at the amount of money I'm making through my podcast, and I realized I would make more money if I went through the subway and sold candy out of a cardboard box.
Oh, for your basketball team.
Yeah, if I was like, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to bother you. I'm just doing this to stay off the streets. I would make 20 times as much money a day as I do on a podcast per month.
Yeah, I don't know where money in podcasting comes from. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
I think it's one of those things where all the comedians saw Mark Maron, like, oh, Mark Maron's doing it, therefore somebody else has got to.
It's like when I came out with my book, Rubber Balls and Liquor, that you can get on gilbertgottfried.com, autograph. But anyway, when that book, I was saying to them, well, do books by comedians sell at all? And they would name like 5 books. It would be Cosby, Seinfeld, Reiser, those would be the ones. And
all the books from the 90s.
Yes. And all the podcasts when you say, does anyone make a penny from podcasts? And they'd say, oh, well, Mark Maron and Adam Carolla, and we'll think of some others.
Yeah, Chris Hardwick makes money.
Yeah.
Oh, the Nerdist, yeah.
Well, Chris Hardwick makes money having other people do podcasts.
Oh,
That's where the money is, kids, in show business, is having other people do it for you. Like
it's basically like, what was his name, the artist?
Warhol?
Warhol.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
everyone
factory.
else painted.
Right.
Yeah. That's how people. Yeah. Andy Warhol, Liam McEneaney. There's definitely a drop. But I gotta say, like, you guys. I think one of the things I really like about your podcast is you guys have people that you don't hear on the quote unquote podcast circuit, like Frankie Avalon, for instance. Like it's funny, people just aren't interviewing these guys, and he's talking about working with showbiz legends like Bob Hope and Jack Benny, and you guys are getting those stories that someone like myself just doesn't have the ability to book someone like that. I mean, is that kind of what your mission statement is?
We were originally going to call the show the Before It's Too Late show.
That's true.
Yeah.
He's not kidding.
Yeah, but we kind of got nervous because that's like getting guests. You're kind of saying, excuse me, I think you're going to be dead in a week, so can I interview you now? And what I like about doing this is we talk to these people and hear all these stories, and I get all these tweets of people say, I had to look up all those names. I had no idea who the person you were talking to was and who he was talking about. But they love learning these stories, and then they find out who these people are.
When I was listening to your podcast, I was thinking you should actually try to get the Library of Congress to sponsor because you're getting a lot of like oral showbiz history.
That's what it started to turn into. We started to realize we were archiving these people's, in some cases it might be these people's last interviews.
Right.
So we just wanted to do something different. We heard every comedian was doing a podcast. I listened to them, Gilbert knew about them, and we just thought, let's do something that we really care about, that we're passionate about, not comics interviewing other comics.
And then when we get someone younger, and by younger I mean 78, we'll get sometimes like people like Bob Saget,
Jeff Ross,
Right.
and
Jeff
Ross, Weird Al.
But Jeff Ross was talking about Milton Berle.
Yeah.
About his friendship with Milton Berle.
Well, we always bring up the penis thing with Milton Berle. And when I was talking to Larry Storch,
Right.
I brought up Forrest Tucker's penis.
What?
I don't mean in conversation.
Right.
I mean, I actually have it in a crate. I brought it
up
at
a
an
staircase.
If you're don't be impressed at home. It's actually hanging on the wall in
Yes.
a case at the Friars Club.
And so we'll have someone there young, and we'll go, so, did you ever meet Douglas Fairbanks Sr.?
Well, a lot of people can interview Weird Al, and it's all about Weird Al, but we know that Weird Al is a fan, that he grew up on Mad Magazine, that he loved Alan Sherman, that he loved other song parodies, that he loved the comedy we love. So we try to do a different interview with Weird Al that you're going to hear on maybe 8 other podcasts or talk shows. We're trying to do what we care about.
Coincidence that you interview Weird Al and he has his first #1 album of his career?
I take full credit for that. Yes.
Other than
I was responsible for The Godfather being
you showed it on USA Up All Night.
Yes.
We had a guest from The Godfather,
You had
Johnny Russo.
Yes.
Who confessed to killing 3 people on the show.
Are you serious?
He did.
And he said, and I said, why did you kill them? And he said, well, what would you do if someone was threatening to kill your children? And I said, well, I guess my children would be in a lot of trouble.
I always like when calling the cops is not an option.
Oh, yes, yeah. And he said, I can confess to 3 murders. And he goes, I killed 3 people. Well, that's 3 I can admit to. So I guess you're allowed 3 people. And there's like a limit. And then if you go past 3, then it's against the law.
Larry Storch also killed 3 people. What are the odds? Every guest.
Marty Allen.
Every guest we have.
There's actually, I don't know if you know this, there's a federal hunting limit.
Oh, yes.
You can get a permit 3 per season.
And we interviewed David Steinberg.
Yes, David Steinberg.
And he said he was on Nixon's enemy list.
Yeah, they used to come and heckle him. They were paid to come and heckle his act.
I don't believe that.
That's what he said.
He said they would come from town to town, and he'd recognize the hecklers. And then he said one guy came up to him who said he's with the FBI or something, and he goes, "I'll protect you. These guys could be dangerous. I'll be with you every minute." And then, when Nixon was being impeached, sitting right next to Nixon was this guy who claimed he was protecting Steinberg. So it gets really weird.
See the things you learn on the Amazing Colossal podcast?
And then David Steinberg said, Nixon was... he was president of the United States.
That's actually an episode I didn't listen to. Did you bring up Seinfeld to Steinberg? Isn't that like kind of like a burr under his saddle a little bit that Jerry Seinfeld was influenced by him and then became really big with that?
Yeah, no, I didn't. Why didn't you tell me this before we interviewed him?
I was unaware too.
But I'm sure if we asked Seinfeld, he'd go, "I never heard of David Steinberg." "What? Is that a comedian? I've never seen him."
That's one of my 2 favorite impressions that you do. You did it's a very I almost feel bad going over this territory. You were doing Seinfeld before he was famous.
Yes, and he was just like another comic in the clubs.
Right.
And everyone, when I'd be doing Seinfeld especially, other comics and the waitresses and people who worked in the club would all run in and they'd be laughing. The audience would be scratching their heads because he wasn't known by. He was just another comic. Right. And the only person who wouldn't come in the room would be Seinfeld, who would be pacing the bar angrily going, "That doesn't sound anything like me. He makes it sound like I have some kind of sing-song voice."
Have you talked to him about doing comedians in cars?
"I don't want you." "Fuck you, Gilbert. If I'm in my car, I'll hit you."
What's your other favorite? Now I'm curious. Your other favorite Gilbert impression? You said there were 2.
Groucho Marx, but not the young middle-aged Groucho that everyone wants to remember. Not the
the Dick Cavett interview.
The bird on his hat.
Yeah. Yes.
With the golf balls.
The golf balls with
right.
clown faces
That's right.
on them.
On a beret.
And a turtleneck jacket and a turtleneck sweater with a jacket over it.
Right.
That was, and he that's the part that fascinated me. Like
he was a beatnik.
Yeah, and he would go on with Cavett, and he'd go, "I remember 1927. They had shoes, and this was something that people would wear on their feet, and they would wear these shoes so they didn't have to walk barefoot. Now, barefoot was something you did when you weren't wearing shoes."
And then you'd be watching this like.
And I'd be so fascinated. At first, I was scared because I grew up. I was watching him do You Bet Your Life,
right,
and all the Marx Brothers movies where he's dancing around and he's like rattling off whole bits,
right,
like 1,000 jokes a second. And then, at first I was scared, and then I became fascinated with that Groucho.
And then he would get up very slowly and walk over to the lip of the stage and start singing.
Oh, yes.
Oh, sure, or Easy Peasy,
Or Easy
one of them.
Yeah.
And it was just like one of those things where it's like
Peasy Weezy.
you really, really thought you were going to watch Groucho die. I mean, I was watching these, years after the fact, and I knew he didn't die on the Cavett show. But just
Although someone did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That health.
Yeah, Rodale.
Yes,
Rodale.
Yeah.
He was a health food expert.
Yeah.
He died, which really killed sales of books.
Actually, I got to say, you guys are aiming for an on mic death.
Thanks. Now we'll never get another guest.
Don't worry, my podcast is all people under 70. Nobody over the age of 70 listens to this podcast. So, don't worry. But you guys had Sue Karloff, right?
Sarah.
Sarah.
Sarah Karloff, and also
Bela Lugosi Jr.
Bela Lugosi Jr. on the same. It was your Halloween episode.
Correct.
Now, how did you guys get these two? Because I remember when you were Frank was telling me you guys were going to start the podcast before you did, and you actually,
the night you interviewed Gilbert and Lewis Black.
yes,
Right.
and you were saying that you had these guys lined up already for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But so how did you end up?
I met Sarah Karloff I was doing one of those autograph signs, which shows, it's just like when I was a kid. I would watch Hollywood Squares, and I always laughed and enjoyed it, but I always thought like, oh, this is when a celebrity is at the bottom rung of showbiz. This is the most pathetic thing. And then, of course, I become a regular on Hollywood Squares.
Actually, when I was a kid, I would watch Hollywood Squares, and I had this dream of being a comedian. And I was always like, oh, maybe I'll be on Hollywood Squares someday. Because, you were on it, and the Muppets were on it. The Sesame Street Muppets were on it, and Whoopi Goldberg was on it. And I was like, that's a big deal. I didn't realize that was supposed to be something.
That's what I used to, and then when I was on it, I had so much fun on that show. But I remember I was doing one of these autograph signings, and there was Sarah Karloff. So I started talking to her, and I said, hello, I'm Gilbert Gottfried, and she said, why, it's very nice meeting you.
She didn't say it like that.
I'm so thrilled.
I don't believe she said that.
Yes. And she was telling us, her father was one of the early creators of Screen Actors Guild, along with James Cagney and...
Yeah.
He was the first president, right?
I think he may have
I
been.
don't know about that. He had a very low number, though. His card was something like number 7.
Right. He was a commie.
Yes, yeah.
He was a red
Union rabble rouser.
Yeah.
But what are some of the stories that she told you guys?
That he would do that, and when they were organizing these meetings, they would all park several blocks away from where they were meeting. So it would be a kind of a top secret thing where they'd walk down in different ways and sneak into this one house or meeting hall, and because people were watching them.
Right. Because they were union organizers, and they really were considered. I mean, guys like Zero Mostel got blacklisted for those kinds of activities, those kind of sympathizings and leanings. So it was actually, people at home, I think, now think of unions as something that's an institution that's corrupt but fairly mainstream. But back when people like Boris Karloff were organizing the Screen Actors Guild, they were in danger of getting blacklisted by the big studios that controlled Hollywood at the time.
And the formation of the Writers Guild, too.
Yeah. Even now, I won't name names, but there have been shows that are on cable.
I would name names.
He regrets not being bored at that time,
Yes.
so he couldn't rat out Elia Kazan.
I can tell you right now that John Garfield is a commie.
If only Senator McCarthy were still alive to be
Yes.
interviewed on your podcast, it would just be an hour of you naming names.
And it's like back then, there were all those things like the Triangle Shirt Factory fire,
Right.
where these girls were totally like slave labor,
Right.
and that's why unions were forming. But it was looked upon like, oh, you're commie sympathizers.
Yeah, and I mean they would have attack dogs sicked on them by the big companies.
Boy, it's a good thing that doesn't go on nowadays.
I mean, Joan Rivers died in the middle of a big fight between her production company and the Writers Guild, you know? But that's still going on. They're still fighting to be unionized. Like, cable is kind of the next anyway, we're talking about podcasts.
I had no idea your show was so political, Liam.
Luckily, there's not enough money in podcasting to ever make that an issue.
Yes.
This will never be a guild podcast. So do you guys have any other like stories that stuck out to you?
No, that's it. That's pretty much. It's been an uninteresting show. Pretty boring career.
Gilbert is not
Yeah.
giving a minute away of his podcast for free. You guys have to go to iTunes and subscribe to get the whole thing. Gilbert's like, I am not wasting a single good anecdote on Tell Your Friends.
Well, we interviewed Roger Corman,
Right.
the great B director of all the motorcycle
Next episode
and
coming up.
science fiction.
When does that drop?
Monday.
Monday. Oh, this drops Monday as well.
Well,
So
same day.
you guys should stop listening to this podcast right now.
Yes.
Go to iTunes, listen to the entire Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast episode, and then come back and listen to the rest of the story.
And even if you don't listen to my podcast, stop listening to this podcast right this second. I don't care if you listen to mine or not. Just stop listening to this one.
I can't disagree.
Yeah, Roger Corman said to us, because he was like, he wrote a book on how I made over 100 movies and never lost a dime. And people have said, because he never spent a dime. And one time he was making a movie, and the crew was out there, and it was at night. The sun had already gone down, and they called Corman, and they said, we don't have any lights. We can't film anymore. And Corman's answer was, well, you have cars, don't you? And they had them all get in their cars and light up the headlights to light the scene in the movie.
Yeah. He also made one movie. Was it The Raven or The Terror, where he was telling us the only reason he made the movie
Terror.
was because the sets were still built
Yes.
and his
Yes.
tennis game got rained out.
Yes.
His tennis match got rained out.
Yeah.
So he said, all right, so I'll go to the set. And I got the stuff up one more day, throw a bunch of actors in there. Nicholson was, pretty much nobody at that time and was a phone call away, and made a movie in an afternoon.
Little Shop of Horrors was very famous also.
And to this day, he says he and the people who wrote it and acted in it have no idea what the Terror is about.
Yeah, and I remember as a kid watching those movies, not really understanding what was going on.
Yeah, you thought you were too young and stupid to
Exactly.
know. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I would watch these movies and be like, well, I guess when I'm older I'll get it.
That was a memorable anecdote.
So people can go to gilbertgottfried.com to listen to Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast.
And get my book and DVD.
Get your book, and you're going to be on The Celebrity Apprentice.
Yes.
You're now allowed to talk about
Yes.
it.
Yeah, but my job, I'm not a contestant. My job is to feed little pieces of chopped up meat to that thing that lives on Donald Trump's head.
And Frank, what do you got coming up? You're a married man.
Got married and went right to a podcast taping. Put my wife in a cab and I said, we got to interview Jeff Ross. 20
Literally.
minutes.
And you know his wife is thrilled. And she goes, my husband's doing a podcast. Now we can finally live in luxury. I could have married the head of General Motors who I was dating, but I'm married to a guy who's doing a podcast.
I warned her.
Is that true? She was dating the head of
Not at all.
Oh.
No. I used to say you might be better off dating somebody, a hedge fund guy, but she wouldn't listen to reason.
My
And here we are.
girlfriend's here doing sound. This is not a podcast interview. It's actually a Scared Straight.
Your girlfriend is very nice and lovely, by the way. Liam.
Yes.
I don't know why she has anything to do with you whatsoever.
Well, you don't have to live with her.
Because I'd like to say I would never fuck you.
I would like to say I'm very grateful to you.
Talking about Scared Straight. If this was a Scared Straight episode, I would want to fuck.
Actually, for her, this is a Scared Gay program. It's all women after this.
It just turns her on to come here and see Jack Benny's violin in a case.
I would like to point out, we were talking about this earlier, she's sitting under a pencil drawing of Whoopi Goldberg and Ted Danson together in the 10 minutes that they were actually dating.
And it seems her head is much, much larger than his.
Well, that's true of all the portraits in this room because it's the roastee and the roast master.
Oh, that's
So
what...
Ted Danson was the roast master for Whoopi, and next to that is Rob Reiner and Billy Crystal.
And that was the roast where Montel Williams walked out on it.
Because Ted Danson was in blackface.
That's the one.
And I thought, and anybody who's ever been to a roast is going, wait a second, he did something offensive at a roast? How did this happen?
Well, you had Shecky Green walk out on you at a
Oh,
roast.
God, yes.
Indeed he did.
They were honoring Freddie Roman and Stewie Stone.
Uh-huh.
And I was up there doing my usual kind of jokes. And Shecky got up and walked out, which shocked me for two reasons. Number one, that he was able to get up, and two, he was able to walk.
Well, he was notorious for having a filthy act in Vegas.
Yes! And you know, if you're living in Vegas, my guess is your life is hitmen and hookers. So it's like, please, don't play moral advocate here.
He also famously got drunk and drove into the fountain in front of Caesar's.
Yes.
So it's this isn't Bishop Tutu we're
But
talking about.
I made Shecky Green walk. Imagine what I could do with Stephen Hawking's.
Is
He would get up and walk and go, I'm offended by Gilbert's language and his jokes.
What's great is we were just I was just doing an impression for her because Stephen Hawking's been now on wife number 3.
Oh.
Yeah, sure.
And just my impression of him beating his second wife. Get over here so I can hit you with this one working finger.
Well, Rich Jenny used to do a bit about how that sums up men.
Yes.
Here's a guy who can only move his pupils, looks at himself in the mirror and says, I can do better.
Fuck you, bitch. My nurse is hotter than you any day.
You know, it's so depressing for me to know that Stephen Hawking is getting that much pussy.
And also, it must be nice for you to see Artie Lang getting it on Twitter now.
Oh my God! Yes, I was so happy about that. I don't even know what he said.
The heat's off you for once.
Yes. So I can play the moral advocate, and I can say I'm so offended by what he said.
I saw you tweet at him that you had to watch him eat a piece of pizza once.
Yeah, and I said, I saw you eat a slice of pizza. I demand an apology. And I'm not offended by what Artie said. I'm offended looking at him.
So you can follow at home. Frank, you're on Twitter?
I am. Just at my name.
At Frank Santopadre.
Correct.
You made it really easy for people to spell that. That's Santopadre.
Very good, Liam.
And you can follow Gilbert at
Real Gilbert.
Real Gilbert. Are you guys on Instagram?
Are we on Instagram, Dara?
I don't know.
Yeah, I believe so. I am, but I don't use it much.
Right.
But we need to do a little more social media for the podcast.
You know,
so.
I did about 20 of these podcasts before I could pronounce Frank's name. I would always,
True.
and I try to introduce it like, and my dear friend, Saint Sadapolimo.
You made a bit out of it, so it wasn't awkward.
bit.
Yeah, I meant to pronounce it that way. Yes.
He got it around episode 8 in his defense.
But Instagram's where the kids are apparently.
I hear that.
They're not on They're not on the Facebooks.
These kids
the
with their
Twitters.
rock and roll music.
with their tight pants
Yeah.
and their duck's ass haircuts.
And their protests.
So one more time, go to gilbertgottfried.com to listen to Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast. You have Roger Corman on today.
Correct.
And then who's on next week?
That remains to be seen. Do we know?
Yeah, I'll tell you right
Dara.
Charlie Chaplin.
Dara is here. We should point out.
By the way,
Gilbert
that's-
and Garrett.
Bob Saget.
Bob Saget the week after.
And Dara is the co-producer of the show and the person who makes it happen. So
Yeah,
I'd like to
it's-
give her due.
It's funny.
Bob Saget is 97. See, that's why he's,
But Dara, you're involved in the booking of the guests.
Correct.
And, yeah.
She is.
And she's the co-producer, and she manages Gilbert. She's the Gilbert Wrangler,
She is the Gilbert Wrangler. She's become the Frank Wrangler.
and mother of 2 children.
both black.
Actually, the little Max is like a Gilbert clone.
Yes. Yeah, and Max came with us when we were talking to Sarah Karloff at the event. And Max, he knows all the monster. He can name every actor
Right.
that played in a monster movie now. Because I can't teach him about baseball.
You
So-
teach him about Lionel Atwill.
Oh, yes, yes.
That's helpful.
Yeah, I'll say to him, so who played Renfield? And he'll go, Dwight Fry. And
That'll protect him on the playground.
When the older kids are like, give me
Good
your lunch
think-
money, and he's
good
like,
thinking.
I don't have any.
and he, when I said, this is Sarah Karloff's, Boris Karloff's daughter. And he looked at a picture of Frankenstein on the wall and he said to her, you don't look like your father.
So what are you doing to ensure he never gets into comedy?
Giving him my material.
And what about you, Frank? Any plans on having children?
No, I think that ship sailed, Liam. But thanks for bringing it up. Just busy with this and
I like to say my comedy,
other
my
projects.
jokes are my children.
that's nice.
Because they disappoint me. And they won't support me in my old age.
Yeah, his wife gave up on the idea of having children because she said, let's see if we can afford paper towels, let alone children.
Well, when the network money gets up and walks out the door.
Well, this is turning into a roast, so this is probably. I'm gonna try to end this before the focus gets on me. Thank you so much, Frank and Gilbert, for talking to us. And Frank, you have anything you want to plug before we?
Do I have anything I want to plug? I'm doing a book with Mario Cantone. I'm working on a Fox special for Thanksgiving night.
With Scarlett Johansson.
Yes. What else am I doing?
I would like to plug Scarlett Johansson.
Well, I mean, who?
I set him up.
Yes.
After seeing the first 5 minutes of Lost in Translation,
Yes.
you won't. Well, I hate to end this, but it's got to end somewhere. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
gentlemen.
buddy. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
And can I tell you, listeners, don't listen to this show. Please, stop.
Where can we get the show, Liam?
Check out Gilbert and Frank's podcast, Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast, on iTunes. Go to gilbertgottfried.com. If you go to iTunes, please leave a review for the Tell Your Friends podcast. It's really important. You can find me on Twitter at HeyIt'sLiam and on Instagram at RadioLiam. You can buy my album at buyliamsalbum.com. You can find back issues of the TYF podcast at tyfpodcast.com. And you can always email us at tyfpodcast@gmail.com. I know we have a bunch of listeners. You guys never email me. You don't follow it on Twitter. Not sure what's going on, but I would love to hear from you at tyfpodcast@gmail.com. The theme to Tell Your Friends was written and performed by A Brief View of the Hudson. You can find them at abriefview.com, and I believe you can follow them on Twitter at A Brief View. Next week, I was hoping we might have a big deal interview. Looks like that might not be happening for a couple weeks. So if not, we'll have part 2 of Jackie the Joke Man's interview, which if you're a Howard Stern fan at all, you're definitely going to want to listen to. All right, this has been Tell Your Friends, history's greatest podcast. Sorry, we were 2 days late.